I'm in my pajamas again. In 2012, news hit the airwaves that was so deranged and quite frankly so unbelievable it had many people scratching their heads. How can this be true? You see, the lead singer of a very famous rock band had been arrested for charges against minors, and the outcome of the court case would leave many in disbelief. This is the story. But before we get into that, I did have some feedback on my Ziz video that I wanted to share with you all. My Lucka writes, stop with the shake and edit, can't watch your video. So I've been trying out like this chaos style editing where I go, whoa, like and shit like that, and it's clearly not working for some people, so I don't know, I'm going to try something different this video. Tell me if you like it. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that good. Ian David Carslake Watkins was born July 30th, 1977 in the small town of Methil Tydfil in South Wales in the United Kingdom. But early on in his life, his biological father would pass away, leaving his mother Elaine, now a single parent, to raise little Ian on her own. In the years after Ian's father's passing, his mother Elaine would meet another man, a Baptist church minister dude named John Davies, and even though there was like a 7-year age difference between Elaine and John, the pair fell madly in love. They would end up getting married, and little Ian and Elaine would relocate 15 minutes up the road to the small town of Pontypridd. Little Ian and his mother Elaine and his new stepfather John would live in a council estate in the outskirts of town. So this is where, when Ian Watkins would talk about growing up blue-collared, he wasn't lying about that. It was very much a working class community and environment he was growing up in. And I guess with the age difference between Elaine and John, with Elaine being almost 30 years old and John being like in his early 20s, John really wanted to have his own children, so the couple would go on to have 2 kids, a boy named Daniel and a little girl named Lisa. So Ian now has 2 half-siblings, and there's like a 12-year age gap between Daniel and Ian, so by the time little Daniel comes around, Ian is at Hawthorne High School in Pontypridd. And it would be while he's at this school that he would meet another local kid named Mike Lewis. He also lived in a council estate. Now, Mike would become Ian's closest friend and future rock star and member of the band himself. As a child, people would say that Ian was very sort of quiet, but he was extremely driven, very talented and creative. He largely kept to himself, avoiding the usual trappings a lot of kids get into, like underage drinking, crime, drugs, and the usual delinquency garbage kids get up to. Instead, he focused on more cerebral pursuits. He was a straight-A student, and by this time, he had discovered music, and in particular, he loved hard rock and heavy metal. His favourite band back then, given the time frame, it was the 90s, was actually Faith No More. So when Ian is just 14 years old, his parents buy him a drum kit, which he sets up in the shed out the back of their council house. And Mike, his friend from school, plays guitar, so he comes over every day and the pair jam in the shed out the back. And given that they both love metal, they decide, you know what, let's play thrash metal, but instead of trying to play covers, straight off the bat, they're writing their own music. And this is where the teens start a band, just the 2 of them, and they call themselves Aftermath, which would only last 2 years, and they did play 2 concerts. I couldn't find out any information on that. I'm guessing maybe at school and the local town hall maybe, but they never recorded anything, and it was very short-lived. So from here, Ian and Mike temporarily go their own separate ways to pursue other musical interests. It would be in 1993 when Ian, when he was hanging out in a park in Pontypridd, would get introduced to a guy named Lee Gaz, another teenager named Lee Gaz, through a mutual friend. Now Lee, he would go on to be a future band member of this big band that's coming up, but he and his friends, they wanted to start a punk band and they needed a drummer, and Ian, he just happened to be there. So they're like, would you like to join our band? And Ian's like, hell yeah, brother, let's do it. So the teenagers call themselves Fleshbind. Now, Fleshbind did release 2 self-recorded demos, one in 93 called Discontent and the other in 94 called Down. Now, this band, however, they did actually go and tour a little bit. They opened for Feeder in London in the mid-90s here. And Feeder's that band, they had that hit in 2001 called Buck Rogers. It was a pretty dope song. So from here, this sort of taps them into, I guess, the UK musician scene a little bit. So they get a taste of it, but this Fleshbind band wouldn't last very long. In fact, they didn't record any more self-titled albums, self-released demos after that. After the tour, they pretty much split up. And that was really because Ian and Lee, they went and joined another punk band called Public Disturbance with Ian again on the drums and Lee on the guitar. And it would be in this band that Ian would reunite with his best friend from school, Michael Lewis. So Mike Lewis is in this band too, he's on the guitar. And Public Disturbance would go on to release 2 demos in 96 and 97. Again, these were self-release demos, but they did get signed to a record label called Days of Fury, and they would release their first studio recorded album called Victim of Circumstances in 1998. But they would ultimately get dropped from that label. They did get picked up by another label later on, but Ian, Mike, and Lee at this stage were like, you know what, we're leaving the band. And the reason they were leaving the band is because they had this little side project that nobody knew about. And in this side project, Ian come out from behind the drum kit and was the vocalist for it. The Lostprophets breakout song would be in 2001 called Shinobi vs. Dragon Ninja, which would win them Best British Newcomer and see the band hit the UK charts. I think they landed at number 41. That was as high up as they went. And it would be just a few years later in 2004 when they would release what I think is arguably their best song, Last Train Home. And this would see them hit the American markets in a big way because they made the US Billboard's Hottest 100. And again, by this stage, they're winning award after award after award. They're becoming like legit rock stars at this point. And it would be during these time, I guess you could say that Ian's dating life is going from strength to strength. He ends up dating this 18-year-old chick named Marissa Fester. She's American. And they dated for several years, keeping in mind Ian at this stage is 26 years old. But he ends up ditching her for a news presenter named Fern Cotton, and she was a presenter for multiple shows, but one of the shows was called Children in Need. It was like a telethon. Yikes. But don't worry about Marissa because she did land on her feet actually pretty well. She ended up with the guitarist from AFI, a dude named Jade Puget. They're actually married to this day. Hey, Miss Murder, can I? Such a good song, man. Such a good song. But during these years, Ian's girlfriends, I guess you could call them, they're most certainly overlapping, let's just say that much. And after what I guess you could only describe as his brief fling with Fern, he ends up with an English model named Alexa Chung. Well, rumoured. And Tilla Tequila. Again, rumoured. But at this stage, it's now 2006, and he meets another woman named Joanna Majewski. I'm guessing it's Polish. And these two are together for a long time. Now, Joanna has an interesting backstory. She was actually several years older than Ian, but before they met, she was actually a police constable, but she would be dismissed for allegations of misconduct. Ian and Joanna would meet online with, I guess what you would call Joanna being a huge fan. Some might say a super fan. And given her, I guess, childhood history, it's pretty obvious as to why Ian, in a sense, would latch onto her and gave up dating models and TV presenters. You see, Joanna had a lengthy, traumatic history dating back to when she was just 8 years old, when she was inappropriately touched by her stepfather. And this would lead Joanna into a life of sex work and promiscuity. And I guess at some point, Joanna cleans up her life, and this is when she joins the Yorkshire Police as a special constable, and she served for 2 years, but, you know, life, man. So I guess in Ian's mind, he's looking at Joanna as the perfect victim / accomplice for what he's planning on doing next. he would introduce her to the world of hard drugs. You see, by this stage, Ian had developed a pretty nasty habit. And it was during these years that even his fellow band members noticed the decline in Ian's mental health. Lee Gaze would go on to tell reporters that he prioritized sleeping around with girls and taking drugs over the band's future. Mike Lewis, his oldest friend, would say that when they started gaining success, he was like totally humble about it. But as soon as drugs came into the mix, he had an air about him like he could do whatever he wanted to because he's like the star, right? But behind the scenes and unbeknown to his bandmates, things are much, much worse. In the early years of Ian's and Joanna's relationship, Ian would make these suggestive comments about wanting to engage in inappropriate, very adult things with children, but when she would press him on it, he would pretend that he was joking. But unbeknown to Joanna, behind her back, Ian is communicating with other women on the internet from all over the world, other fans of him and his band. Now, simultaneously back in Pontypridd, his younger brother Daniel, who was attending Hawthorne High School, because there's like a 12-year age gap, he's getting loads of attention because people are like, man, you're the brother of this rock star. But what would come next? Well, it was just plain sick. Now, thanks to legends on Reddit, I was able to get a hold of the court transcript of this case against Ian Watkins. Now, I'm going to proceed very cautiously. If you want to skip this part, I'm going to tell you without telling you. If you want to skip this part, there'll be a timestamp somewhere, I guess. I'm going to edit this in. So in March of 2007, after a Lostprophets concert, Ian met a 16-year-old female fan. Now, she was a virgin at the time, and he would arrange to meet up with her in a hotel room where he would get her to wear her school uniform. Now, it's while they're there, Ian pulls out a camera or a phone, I don't know what the hell he had back then, but he films this entire interaction with this 16-year-old girl, and he does her in the front, the back, and the mouth. And then afterwards, he urinates all over her face and then gets her to drink it. But he didn't stop just there. If it could get any worse, I don't know. In August the following year, he meets another 16-year-old girl, a fan of the band, after a concert. And again, he does the same thing, just this time he films him giving her lines of cocaine. But things get much worse from here. During this period of time, Ian is talking to other women online, ones with small children. He would engage them in inappropriate conversations where pictures and videos were exchanged. These were involving these women's children. It would be at some point in 2008, Joanna becomes aware of what's going on and she reports Ian to child welfare and the police. This tipping point came when I guess she found out that Ian had given an infant cocaine and had inappropriately touched him. This was something that Ian had told her. So while she's at the cop shop, and I guess because of her history, they didn't believe her. They just notched her up to being some jilted ex, some obsessed fan of the rock star. And I guess Ian sort of backed that up and said, you know, I don't really know this bitch. And let's be honest, people throw around false allegations about celebrities all the time. So I can kind of see why the police at this stage would believe that. And it didn't help that Joanna's own sister had spoken to the police as well and basically told them she was nuts. So after this all happened, Joanna, I guess, was gaslit so much by everybody that she actually apologizes to Ian because she figures she must have just gotten it wrong. But of course, as we all know, Joanna didn't get it wrong. She was spot on because things got much, much worse. Because Ian continued after this point with a visit from the police and Child Protective Services. He continued to speak to women online who had children. That was sort of what he was targeting, ones with very, very, very small children. It would also be around this time that Ian would start a side project DJing, doing remixes of songs, and he named his little band thingy L'amour, la morgue, which is like French, and it means love the morgue, which I think is like totally like an insight into how this man thinks. But I mean, who gives a about his music at this point? By 2010, another woman steps forward, not Joanna, and she goes to the police and she's like, Ian Watkins has been making very disturbing comments to me about children on the internet. It would also be around this time that Joanna again goes back to the police because by this time she has seen some indecent images on Ian Watkins' computer involving children. But again, it goes nowhere. The police don't even bother investigating it. And now you've got images. Like, surely you can go and look at that, like, and just see. Just see if this woman's nuts. Now, by this stage, it's like 2010, 11. He's talking to women all around the world. He's having these conversations with these women. They're exchanging pictures, they're exchanging videos. They're very inappropriate. They're involving minors. And some of these women today have never been located or even found. Like, they just disappeared. But it would be in late 2011 when things would really take a turn for the absolute worst. It would also see Joanna make yet another attempt to contact the police, but again, they just dismissed it and did nothing. And again, thanks to the people on Reddit for the transcript. I'm going to put a timestamp in here again for you to skip forward because this part I'm about to go into, you had the savages on Reddit admitting to crying while reading this, and I'm going to tread very carefully again because we got to make this YouTube friendly. In late 2011, Ian Watkins met a 19-year-old fan who would later be a co-defendant. It's at this point he's grooming this woman, and by March the following year, the conversations as described by the judge is extremely disturbing. The 19-year-old woman had a 10-month-old son. On the 21st of March, Ian is staying at the Copthorne Hotel in Cardiff, where he texts her, come down this weekend and we can F him up again, referring to her 10-month-old son. She texts back, tell me if you want to get your blank in our boy. This woman also referred to getting her little 10-month-old boy high on meth, and I believe traces were found in the fibers of his hair, his little hair follicles, that actually found meth in it. So that tracks. It would be on the 2nd and 3rd of April where she would take the small child to the K West Hotel in London to visit Ian. This is documented and a known fact because Ian Watkins recorded this entire thing. In the video, the young mum presents the baby to Ian, who then tries to, in the mouth and in the back. The mother then places the boy's blank in her mouth and his hands on her. Ian then to the little boy. I'm sorry, man, like this is really messed up, but for the longest time, I didn't understand why Ian Watkins' sentence was what it was until I read through this. So now I know, and I guess now you know. It's at this point with all the text exchanges and the videos that this woman is a willing participant. She would send pictures of herself sucking to Ian. And she would go on to say things like, we've been taking it too easy on him, just really sick shit like that. From here, we enter mother number 2 and the second co-defendant in this case. Don't worry, these two bitches get it. In August of 2012, Ian had met another fan online. This time it's a 24-year-old single mum with an infant daughter. The talk quickly moves to Ian and this woman talking about moving in together. I mean, like, she's like this desperate single mum and he's this rock star and he's like, yeah, we'll totally move in together. But he tells her, like, if I have you, I have your kid too. But not like in a stepfather wholesome way. No. And she totally agrees to this. In fact, she tells Ian that it's going to be a mother-daughter slave duo worshipping you. Now, the conversations with this mother turn absolutely despicable. They talk about engaging the baby in acts with animals and, again, drug use. Ian Watkins would also talk about renting the young child out to fat old rich men. He would also talk about torturing this poor little thing. All the while, the baby's 24-year-old mum is like totally going along with this. Now, in Ian's computer, there was an encrypted folder that computer forensic investigators would eventually crack the password to, which was IFUKKIDZ. And inside this encrypted folder were hundreds of indecent images of children, animal abuse, and videos. And one of those videos was a Skype call between Ian and this 24-year-old mum only known as P. In the video, P is using her finger on the baby while Ian is... Now, P always denied meeting up with Ian in person. However, there is compelling evidence that the two, in fact, did meet up on two separate occasions. They just couldn't really prove it. And the reason they couldn't prove it is because Ian, this time, he either didn't record it or he deleted it or got rid of it somehow because there was just no proof. But text communications would suggest that, in fact, they did actually meet up. But she would say, oh, no, we never did this in real life. By February 2012, Joanna, again, is making another attempt at talking to the police about Ian's behaviour. Like, this is like four times, I think, now. But this time what Joanna had been doing is she had been actually exchanging CP with Ian because she's like trying to honeypot him. Like, so he's sending her these images. I think she sent like 2 back, but he was sending it to her, and she's like trying to keep this as evidence. But again, she's at the cop shop and they do nothing. This is crazy Joanna, yet she got fired for misconduct many years ago. Don't listen to her. She's obsessed with this guy. So now it's late 2012 and the police get credible information that Ian Watkins is involved in illicit drug importation. Most notably cocaine and meth, because, he's a bad drug addict. So they're like, well, forget all the child stuff, but we think that he might be drug dealing at least. So it's the 17th of December when they actually raid his home. And this is where the cops confiscate his computer. He had multiple mobile phone devices, hard drives, I guess because they're trying to catch like drug dealers because he's such a heavy user of drugs. They're like, well, whoever he's getting it off must be pretty big time. But it was while they were examining these devices that everything Joanna had been saying to them for years at this point becomes pretty crystal clear that she was telling the truth. The police find indecent images and videos of children, and they also find the text communications between Ian Watkins and multiple women. They're having these sick chats about kids, and a lot of the time it's these women's own children. So on the 19th, just 2 days after he was arrested, he is now charged with crimes against children. The two women that he had been talking to and engaging with about their babies, they're also arrested. This news went all around the world and it shocked Lostprophets fans. And for his younger brother, Daniel, I guess the tide had most certainly turned. He was no longer sort of looked at like the kid with this rock star brother. He's now the kid with this rock spider brother. Now, Ian was granted conditional bail at first, but the Crown did appeal it, thankfully, and it got revoked, so he would now sit in jail until the trial. Almost 1 year later, in November of 2013, the trial for the Lostprophets frontman Ian Watkins and his two co-defendants is underway. All in all, they end up all taking guilty pleas. I mean, the evidence is so overwhelming at this point. I mean, there's video of it. And this would see Ian Watkins sentenced to 35 years in prison. But given his guilty plea, his sentence was reduced to 24 years, which means that he's eligible for parole in, I think, 2032. But I highly doubt he's ever going to get released. And that's for what comes later. The two co-defendants, the 19-year-old woman with the baby boy, she got 14 years in prison, and the 24-year-old woman with the baby girl, she got 17 years. And Peaches Geldof, the daughter of legendary rocker Bob Geldof, she would actually tweet both these women's names because for some reason you can't find out their actual names. Like, it's against the law to post it like publicly, and Peaches Geldof posted it publicly. Then she had to retract it, and then she had to make an apology. I don't know why, like, these women get anonymity. I've got no idea. Maybe someone in the comments section can tell me. I don't know why. ChatGPT doesn't even know why. And now Ian Watkins' brother Daniel, he has nothing to do with Ian himself. He doesn't visit him in prison or anything. In fact, like, him and his sister Lisa, they've kept very low profiles since this. I mean, I don't even think they're on social media. I guess the stink of what their brother did just travels too far and too wide. But Ian Watkins, whilst in prison, made several attempts to create La Morgue music. He even reached out to another YouTuber, I can't remember his name, and this YouTuber covered the Lostprophets many years ago, and he sees this, like, I don't know if it was a tweet or whatnot from Ian Watkins in prison about La Morgue music, and he was like, what? Like, get the fuck out of here, bro. But since Ian Watkins' incarceration, he has had many young women still visit him in prison, which is like weird because he doesn't look like that anymore. His teeth are rotten and everything. He's gained a lot of weight. Like, he's not the attractive rock star he used to be. But these women still visit him in prison, and he was actually caught with a mobile phone. Someone had smuggled in a mobile phone, and he was communicating with women on this phone. And I believe he was actually speaking inappropriately about children yet again. So this guy is clearly just, he's not stopping. But as messed up as that story is, there is a silver lining. Kind of, I guess. On the 5th of August 2023, Ian Watkins was taken hostage by 3 inmates for 6 hours where he was beaten and stabbed. Apparently it was over a drug debt. But I do know that rock spiders have a very hard time in jail, so I hope it's that. Now, I can't help but feel maybe the screws just sort of allowed it to happen. I mean, 6 hours is a long time before rushing in there when there's just 3 inmates. But they're claiming it happened on a Saturday and there just wasn't a lot of staff. So, I don't know. I like to think maybe they just like let it play out and let's see what happens to Ian. But in saying all of that, I do sort of question like how he became that, because there was nothing in his past that would suggest that he liked kids. And I'm wondering if it had anything to do with drugs. Like, did the meth sort of like lead him down this path? Because I have heard stories about people who do meth and hard drugs like that. They have this increased sexual libido and they just, you know, they get really into some kinky, very dirty stuff. So I've heard. Their minds become so depraved from drugs. I mean, I have tried to research that angle like multiple times, but I can't find anything credible that sort of suggests that that is the case. It's just from what I've heard. I don't know. Let me know what you think, but Ian Watkins most certainly abused his position as a rock star to get to vulnerable women. There's no doubt about it. And given the fact of who he was able to manipulate these women into, you know, doing this very nasty stuff to their own children. It was very self-serving, though, what the women were doing, because they wanted to be with Ian Watkins. And although I don't feel an ounce of empathy for these 2 women, I think they're where they belong. I do feel sorry for these poor little babies, because even though they are babies, at some point they will grow up to find out what happened to them as little babies. And I know that one of these children is growing up in the foster care system because there were no other family members that could take care of the poor little thing. It's just a sickening story all around, man. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think that drugs may have led him to do it, or do you think he always wanted to do that and drugs just sort of like enabled him just to go about doing his sick fantasy? I really don't know. I have tried to research it again. I couldn't find anything to back up sort of, I guess, my question at this point. Hey, I'm editing this right now, and I sort of realized something as I'm editing this video, that the reason I think that they did not publish the women's names is to protect the kids. It really had nothing to do with the women. But there was another part of the video that I forgot to mention, that Joanna chick that was getting all this information, like the CP and stuff. She ended up going that route because the cops just weren't taking her seriously. They tried to charge her. She had to fight that for like 2 years before she got set free, I guess, from found innocent. How ridiculous. But thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, like it. If you didn't, down thumb it. Just down thumb it. Share it with your uncles, your aunties, your sisters, your brothers and your cousins. And as always, stay safe out there in internet land.